Hi everyone, I'm Sator Sanders of Borrowing Tape, and today I am here with Jordan Graham, the writer and director of the latest horror film Sator, which follows a secluded family under the constant watch of a supernatural entity who intends to claim them. Sator comes out on February 9th, so be sure to have a look. Thank you so much for joining us, Jordan.
Thank you.
So let's hop right in. So Jordan, you were not only the writer and director on this project, but also the film's cinematographer, editor, and you even did the music. So I have a huge respect for jack of all trades types. How did you do it?
Well, one step at a time. There's a lot I had to learn while I was going along. Like I've been making projects forever, but actually shooting the cinematography, that came kind of natural to me, as far as like doing the sound and coloring the film when it was over. I had to learn that as I was going along. So, yeah, I also built the cabin
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
That's amazing. So were there a lot of people on set, or it was just you running around?
So I shot for 120 days. For a majority of those days, it was just myself and one or two of the actors. About 10 of those days, I had one person assist me with basic tasks. Like if there was a fire that I started, somebody was there holding a hose, or like I had to shoot from a back of a truck once. And then there was one day where I had 3 people help me, and that was a dangerous day that I couldn't have done by myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a lot of days it was just by myself too.
Wow. So did you always plan on taking up all these roles, or was it more out of necessity?
Necessity. There was a lot of reasons. There's 3 main reasons. One was budget restraints. I don't like using people unless I have something to offer them. That was one. Another one is that it's really hard to get noticed in this industry. So I wanted to do something in a very unique way and have the most unique possible story I could tell. And then the other reason was I had a really hard time getting financing for the film. And I tried doing crowdfunding and that didn't work out, which is fine, but I was in kind of like a low spot. And I had local filmmakers in my area that was like, oh, I'd like to give you advice. And I was like, I love it. Like, let's give me advice. And their advice meant basically talking down to me and telling me that in order for me to make a film of quality, I need to have this, and like, yes, I would love that, but I don't have the means of getting that, and you're basically telling me I'm not good enough to do it. And so I decided basically then is like, if I ever get financing for this film, or if I ever get a chance to make this film, I'm going to do it myself and prove to you and prove to other filmmakers that like you can make a film of quality, and you don't need a whole bunch of people to do it. I don't recommend anybody do what I did. Like that was 7 years of on my own, and it took a toll on me. So, I mean, I'm glad I did it, but I'll never do it again. So
that's awesome. I've worked on the film festival circuit for a bit, and I definitely know what you're talking about. There is definitely that air of like, well, I did it, so So I'm glad that you proved them wrong. I like it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we'll see. Hopefully it worked out. Hopefully people like it. And
yeah, it's a super funky film. So I read that Sator was in post-production for almost 6 years. What was that editing process like?
I started the film in June 2015 is when I started shooting, and I finished 2016. So as far as shooting goes, yeah. So the process, though, I went into special effects first for the right after that, and it took only about a week to do the special effects because most of the stuff was in camera. So I had a lot of like Photoshop and After Effects. So that was fine. But then I went to coloring the film, and that took 1,000 hours because I had to learn the software. And then from that, then I went to sound design, and sound design was the most tedious and exhausting part. So like everything you hear in the film, besides my grandmother speaking, everything that you hear, I had to do in post-production. So like every cloth, every little clicking and mouth going like that, and every little breath, a lot of the other actors breathing in the film was actually my breath. And it took a year and 4 months to record just the audio. And then I had to learn how to mix it in 5.1. And yeah, it was a long process for sure.
So you're definitely walking out of this with a lot of new skills. So.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I don't want to. I rather not mess with audio again. I don't think I would want to be grading a feature film again. And I lose my memory of, like, sometimes I'd have to go back. Again, I told you at the beginning, like I did things in steps, and I'd have to learn it, and then I would go back on certain things and totally forgot how I, like with some special effects shot, I would have to go back and relearn how to do it again, or with coloring, I would forget. So I feel like I have a good knowledge of how I want things to look and sound. And so if I ever do work with like a team of people, I'll be able to help work with them and direct them, because I know exactly what I would want things to look and sound like.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where did this story come from? I understand it's a very personal story. What was your inspiration for writing the script?
Like, yeah, that question is always like, there's so many different inspirations. And I mean, the main one is my grandmother, but that didn't even come until I was actually shooting the film. So my grandmother in 1968, she brought home a Ouija board, and she conjured up an entity named Sator. And throughout that summer, so 3 months of being with him, doing something called automatic writings, which is where she had like a glass of gin in one hand and a pen in another hand, and just let Sator speak through her, and she would write down what he said. So at the end of that 3 months, she ended up in a psychiatric hospital because of that. And I didn't know any of this before I was making the film. So I started shooting the film with a script that I already had. And since we decided to use her cabin, or I decided to use her cabin, or sorry, her house as a location for the film, I was like, let's get a quick cameo with her in the film. Let's just put her in the film for a little bit. And then I'll be able to like memorialize her, and that was it. And so the actor Michael Daniel, who plays Pete in the film, I told him that we're going to do an improvisational scene with my grandmother. You're going to meet her on camera for the first time. You're going to pretend to be the grandson and maybe talk about spirits, because she likes talking about spiritual stuff, and just go from there. And so we started the scene, and then that's when she randomly started talking about the voices that were in her head and the automatic writings. So, and I never heard of that. I never heard of her automatic writings before. So after that day was done, I went home and I was reviewing the footage, and it's like, what is this automatic writings? And then I started doing research on my family's history and her with the voices in her head. And I would go back and shoot more. I was like, I have to put this in the film. Like, this is so personal and so unique, and I have to pursue this more. So I went back to my grandmother, shot more footage with her, went back home, tried putting in the film, but you can never, when you're with her, you can't tell her what to say, and you have no idea what she's going to be talking about. So a lot of the things she would say would not work in the current story that I already had. So I'd have to go home and rewrite, spend a week, take a week break, and just rewrite what she just said into this film. And then I'd go back and shoot, and the same cycle would happen. So that happened probably like 5 times or so. Yeah. So that's kind of how the inspiration, I mean, it was evolving the whole time. The story just kept evolving throughout the process of this film.
Wow. So at times the film was shot like a home movie, and at times the screen format would change. Were these real home movies? And could you tell us a little bit about those choices?
Yeah. So originally there was going to be like a flashback scene in the film, and I wanted to shoot it in 16 millimeter, or not even that, high 8 or Super 8. But I didn't know how to. I had never messed with film before, and it would be too expensive. And so my mom got a bunch of old high 8 tapes transferred to DVD, and I was just looking through them. I wasn't looking for anything for the film. I was just watching them, and I ended up coming to a birthday scene, and from like 25 years ago, and like I'm in it, but I'm I don't know, like I was 5 or 6, something along, maybe 9, I don't know. But I'm watching this scene, or I'm watching this footage, and my grandmother's house, it was in my grandmother's house, and the house looked exactly the same. And my grandmother, like everything was set up perfectly already. Like my grandmother was on one side and my grandfather was on the other side, and then I had this scene in the middle that I could create my own scene. And so I went out and I bought the same, or I made the same cake, or a similar looking cake. I made similar looking presents. I bought the same camera, and I bought the same Hi8 tape, and I shot a scene around that footage. I shot my own birthday scene and was able to incorporate this 25, 6, 7, 8 year old footage into that flashback scene. And I loved the quality so much of that camera that I ended up I kept shooting with it, seeing if I could put any of it in the film at all. So
Wow, that is super. That's movie magic right there.
yeah. And then like even like at the end of the film, like the credits where she's just speaking, like I filmed that later. And yeah. Anyways.
That's awesome. So where was the film shot? Those creepy, foggy woods were absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it was shot in Santa Cruz Mountains. So I live in like a suburban area in Santa Cruz, California, and we have forests like 40 minutes away, and a lot of it was just shot off right at the side of the road because I had to carry all the gear and everything. And then the snow was in Yosemite Valley in California. The snow was only 2 days of shooting, so most like 118 other days was in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So.
Cool. So the Sator has a signature sound, like a type of screech. How did you come up with and make that sound?
Oh, I wish I had it here. I was actually looking for it earlier. 1 second. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. I was looking for it earlier. It was a death whistle. Like there's something called like an Aztec death whistle where they would blow into it before, I guess like to scare other villagers, or but I found like on Etsy, I think I found this whistle thing, and you blow into it and it makes that sound. Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah. And I was looking for it earlier because I was gonna like possibly, somebody asked about it because no one's asked about it yet on these interviews. I was like, oh, I'll blow it, but sorry. Anyway.
That's super cool. Were you looking specifically for something like that, or did you just happen upon it?
Originally, it was going to be the sound was going to be a deer whistle, like a hunting deer, but that sound is just a bunch of popping sound. It didn't sound good. So I was like, okay, I need to find something that's a little bit more haunting, I guess.
Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit about the Sator's design? It looks super cool and like oddly real.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I off Etsy again, I bought a whole bunch of animal pelts and bones, and it was like I only built one costume because it cost too much, but it was like there's like 60 dead animals on one costume, and there was like 4 coyote pelts on one arm, and I had like a bull, and a lot of like each hand had mice on it with raccoon jaws, and yeah, and I just put it together with rope. Basically, I went and bought some rope and I tied it together. And yeah, was that what you're asking?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, they're real animals. Yeah.
That's cool. So being that it's so personal, does the idea of Sator scare you personally, and was making this film at all cathartic for you?
Sator did not scare me personally. Sator to me was just a mental health thing going on with my grandmother. That's what I believe. My mother thinks he was a wonderful guardian. My aunt thinks he's Satan, but I just think it was just like my grandmother was diagnosed with schizophrenia back back in the day. So I think it was just a mental health thing. What was the other question with that? You had two there.
Was making the film at all cathartic for you?
No. Cathartic. No, it was stressful. I mean, well, not stressful. The whole film, it was so tedious. Like, I worked on this thing for 7 years, and the film wasn't exactly hard, I guess, to make, but it was just really, really, really tedious. And when you're locked away, I was in isolation for about 5 years, 4 years with this project. Didn't talk to anybody. So no, it wasn't very cathartic at all. It was cathartic when it was finished,
Yeah.
and being able to like show it to people and having interviews like this. That to me is, I guess, cathartic.
Yeah. So which films and directors have had an impact on you as a filmmaker and particularly on your film, Sator?
I'll just say with Sator. Sator had a lot. Again, it took 7 years to make. I had a lot of inspirations throughout the process of it. So like the very beginning, my first inspiration was True Detective, the first season of True Detective. Cary Fukunaga directed that season. That was a huge inspiration. And then another one was Jeremy Saulnier, who his Blue Ruin movie. That was a major inspiration because just how much he gave to that film himself, and how he put his house up for mortgage to make it. And what did he do? He refinanced his house, I think, to make it. Those were two major inspirations as just getting into just trying to get the film made. And then while I was making it, Jonathan Glazer, so Under the Skin was a big influence. What else? There was The Very Last Shot of the movie, had a little David Lynch's Rabbits was in there. Another one is like Only God Forgives, so Nicholas Winding Refn. And then so that was while shooting it, and then like post-production, like The Witch, and so Robert Eggers and Ari Aster, and yeah. So
Nice.
I get a lot of inspirations and directors as I go along.
So kind of an offset of that question, what are some of your favorite films from the past decade?
Past decade. Mandy, Midsummer. Man, that's a rough one. So any film by Nicholas Winding Refn, Yorgos Lanthimos. So I love Killing of the Sacred Deer. Man, the 2010s. I guess The Master. I think The Master is one of my favorite films. Yeah.
Awesome. So last question, and then I'll let you go. Do you have any upcoming projects that you can let us in
on? I am writing right now because I'm never making a film by myself again. So I do. So hopefully I can get a couple projects made. I wrote like a little, because I don't want to share too much, but because I always tend to share way too much. So I have 2 scripts. One of them is very heavily influenced by the child abductions that went on in Belgium in the 90s. And then another one is, the blurb that I'll give you for that is, it's about an impossibly long shipping container with a touch of cosmic horror. If I can get it made, I'd love to get them made one day, but we'll see.
Awesome. So we'll be looking out for it. We'll be looking out for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Jordan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's been awesome.